Good morning and welcome to the Boca Voice and our special edition of Fact or Fiction Friday, actually on Monday. And just because we're previous to pre-election, I had invited Robert Weinroth in, one of the city councilmen of Boca Raton, to come in and have a great conversation with us this morning. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
My
and
pleasure, Peter. Thank
great
you for
having you.
inviting me.
So we wanted to have some conversations in regard to this debate that's going on about the wildflower property, and I thought who better to have us in today than one of the city councilmen. And thank you so much for joining us. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've been a resident of Boca Raton now for 25 years. My wife and I had a business, a small business, medical supply, and we have 4 children in our blended family. We love Boca Raton, love the activities here, and wouldn't live anyplace else.
That's awesome. And what brought you into public service?
Well, I got to tell you, I was working with some of my friends who were running for public office, and was very excited about the potential of getting hands-on and dealing with issues rather than having to take a seat and watch others do it. And I felt that a lot of the people that I was helping get elected were no smarter than me. And so I felt that I was at a place right now in my life where my business interests weren't taking as much time. My wife was very supportive, and so I said this would be a good time for me to get involved with public service.
Well, I have to applaud you for it. I got to tell you, it's commendable. Giving yourself to public service, it doesn't. It's not something that is easy to do, and it's definitely a thankless job.
Well, some say it's thankless, but I got to tell you, for me, it's the best job I've ever had. I have a lot of fun. I mean, the meetings are just a small part of it. I get out to the neighborhood, I speak to people constantly, and I go to functions. I'm an ambassador for the city. You know, when we do ribbon cuttings, when there are events, they would love to have, someone from the city there. And I enjoy that. I enjoy having people come up to me, either telling me that they approve of what we're doing, and even those who don't approve. I like to listen to them and hear what their views are. I try not to be isolated, have my own views just the way that I think things should be. So, as I say, I've never had a better job in my life. I just love it.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much. I think you're doing a great job. So let's talk a little bit about the wildflower property.
Wildflower, what's that?
So tell us a little bit about your understanding and how we got to where we're at currently.
Well, again, before I got on the council, much of this happened. Back in 2009, the city made a decision to purchase that parcel of land that's right at the corner of Palmetto and the intercoastal
Right at
waterway.
Fifth.
Yeah, and that had been a restaurant. I understand it was quite the restaurant back in
I
those
enjoyed
days. I was never there, and in front of it was another restaurant called Maxwell's.
Yeah.
And when those both went out and the buildings got knocked down, at some point in 2009, the city made the decision to acquire that property. And they paid $7.5 million for the property. And then the question was, what are we going to do with this property? And there were a lot of discussions. There was a council workshop where they invited the community to come in and bring their ideas in. And during that process, the council eventually made the decision that they wanted to see that become a restaurant, and they had several ideas: an open air restaurant, which was nixed because it would have created problems for the community, being very loud, and ultimately an RFP was put out. The Hillstone Corporation responded, and the city was in the process of negotiating a lease with the Hillstone Group so that eventually we could have a quality restaurant on that site where people could enjoy being on the water, eating there, dining there, walking along what would be a walkway. Perhaps we'd have dockage or whatever, and it would be something that everybody could enjoy. That you wouldn't have to be wealthy enough to own a residence on the waterway, on the intercoastal, or on the ocean. Everybody could enjoy it, and remarkably, in our city, we have very few places where you can eat on the water. There's of course, there's a resort and club, but you have to be staying there, or you have to be at a function there. And then there's the Waterstone, where of
Right.
course you can go over and eat. But that's really it. If you really want to do waterside dining, you have to go up to Delray, or you have to go down to Deerfield Beach, and they have very nice places, and there's no reason why Boca shouldn't also.
I would agree with you. So tell me some of the challenges that you've seen. Some of the residents on both sides. Tell me some of the things you've heard.
Well, look, it's no secret that there have been people who have been challenging the city's decision to go in that direction. There are people who have challenged the idea of a 25 or 50-year land lease to Hillstone. There are challenges in the negotiation of that lease, but we put that to the side when the Citizens Initiative was brought before us, because we're waiting to see what happens on Tuesday, whether the citizens are going to approve the Citizens Initiative or they're going to defeat it.
Can I ask you a couple questions about that?
Sure.
Because there's been a lot of debate about this,
Mhm.
and specifically in the language on it.
Right.
Now, some people are asking, why in the world would the city write such a crafted message that makes it seem like it's impossible to write, or it's so confusing?
Well, Peter, you're not the first person who's asked me that. And I've got to tell you, it wasn't written by the city. The language of this initiative was actually formulated by a committee of residents. I'm assuming that they had a land use attorney that helped them craft the language, but the city had nothing to do with it. So the fact is that the people who are the movers of this initiative have always said that it has to do with that particular parcel, the wildflower parcel. But nowhere in the initiative does it say anything about Wildflower, Hillstone. It's become a very broad initiative, and in fact, if you take a look at the language, and I actually have it right here, if you take a look at the language, it says all city-owned land adjacent to the intercoastal waterway shall, and here's very important, it says only be used for public recreation, public boating access, public streets, and city stormwater uses only. Now they bracketed those four uses in the two words only. So you and I can look at this and say, well, but does it mean I can put maybe a small eatery? Maybe I could put a kiosk there. Maybe I could sell beach blankets. If it isn't between these two words only, we can't do it. And again, we're not talking just about the Wildflower property. It's saying anything along the intercoastal waterway. So this has become a question that really is not addressing what was the issue that the citizens were bringing before us, which was, we don't think you should be doing this with that parcel.
So even the umbrellas that people enjoy today, they have to go away based upon this.
Literally speaking, you could not have any concessions on anywhere on the intercoastal. Now, there is a question whether the Gumbo Limbo Nature Center would be able to continue operating with its souvenir shop, with the things that it does there. I mean, a nature center is not here. There's nothing here about grandfathering in. Now, the people who are proponents of this are saying, well, the city council can always change it. And they are legally correct. The city council, this is going to be, if it does pass, it will be just like any other ordinance in the city. So we can pass an ordinance, or a past council could pass an ordinance, and we can always change it. But politically, that wouldn't happen.
Well, that'd be political suicide.
Well, again, we all know that there's going to be a municipal election in March. There'll be 3 seats on the ballot, and no one is going to just ignore the residents' decision on Tuesday. So I think that residents need to be very careful and understand what they're voting for. If they clearly do not want to have any commercialization of any parcel that the city owns on the waterway or anything else. I mean, what is not even included in here are things like you couldn't run electrical lines in there. You couldn't have sewers in there. So if we wanted to put a bathroom on that property, we couldn't, because you couldn't turn on the lights. There are cables running through many of our properties, coming from the ocean, and transatlantic cables. We couldn't continue to have them. We have leases with the cable operators. We would have to, when those leases came due, say, I'm sorry, you can't continue to run your cables through there. there are a lot of unintended consequences. And I look at the cartoon that was shown on Boca Watch recently, where it says, "We want a park, we want a restaurant. Wait, we can have them both." Not with this language. There's been a visioning uh, discussion that Councilman Singer had held a few weeks
I
before.
attended it.
Okay, and I understand a lot of very interesting ideas came out of that session. But you know what? Many of those ideas are foreclosed by the language of this initiative. And when Mr. Singer reported to the council on the ideas that were brought forward, he had mentioned that there were ideas of concessions, of cafes, of restaurants, of retail. Well, none of those are possible if this initiative is passed. So I think people need to understand, number one, it's not just this Waterstone property. It's all the city-owned property. And certainly, if they receive one of these in the mail from the proponents, we're not putting a skyscraper on the property. Nobody is talking about putting a condo on the property. And to put this up there to get people thinking the city is about to monetize that property and turn it into this horrible condominium is really it's just it's a deception.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
As a matter of fact, was it ever intended to be a park?
it was never intended to be a park. This was a commercial property. It was bought as a commercial property. It has never been a park, and it was never intended.
But it did have an opportunity to become a condo and it was turned down, did it not?
At the point in time when this was being considered by the city for purchase, I understand that there was a developer who was considering putting a condominium on it.
And I do believe that if it was turned into that, I actually probably would have opposed a condominium complex there. I don't think that would have been right for the city.
Well, remember, and you know, there's a lot of discussion about what's going on in our downtown right now. You know, we're doing a redevelopment which was approved by the voters 25 years ago, and we have an ordinance called 4035, which is basically the rules of how we build. People who own property in the downtown, and this actually is outside of the CRA. It's right across the street from where the boundary is. But
Sure.
people who own property have property rights. So if someone owned this property privately and they were able to come forward with a use that fell within our zoning, there's really no way to say, no, you know what, I'd prefer you just not do that. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot of things going on here. I think there are some people who are feeling that the development of our city is going a little too fast, and they're looking at the wildflower as really a way of testing whether this anti-development fever is starting to build and to tell the council, stop, you know, you're doing too much.
I think it would be a shame though if that was a testament to what we're trying to do. I mean, if you're using a 2.2 acre lot that really isn't going to affect what's happening anywhere else in the city, and you're really going to do irreparable harm to the rest of the parks that we have.
Well, I think number one, you know, one of the people who's come before us, who is now running for city council, Andrea O'Rourke, has come before us many times to say, we need a sense of place. We need to have a way of drawing people downtown. And then she's put up some slides to show what other cities have done. And when I look at these slides, I say, wait a minute. You know, show me the High Line, show me the Riverwalk in San Antonio, show me, you know, Central Park, and I say, that's nice. We have 2.2 acres.
Right.
It's a postage stamp. So it would be lovely to have some of these large expanses, and we do. In fact, we're very lucky that the people who came way before me were smart enough to have taken the oceanfront and made it public, to take a lot of the land that's in our city and make it for recreation. We have land out there right now that hasn't even been developed yet. Ocean Strand, which was acquired by the city, which is now owned by the Beach and Park District, hasn't even been developed yet. There are no plans for it yet. We have a lot of land out there. We're right now talking about Lake Wyman and redeveloping the area out there with the canoe trails and the kayaking and allowing people to have more recreation. These are areas that we are excited about developing so people have the opportunity to go out there and enjoy the reason why we're living down here in Florida.
You know, I look back at history, and I was here back when they actually built Meisner Park
Okay.
originally, and I remember controversy around them not wanting to build Meisner Park. And I
Well,
can't imagine a Boca Raton today without Meisner Park.
it's amazing. I mean, again, anecdotally, because I wasn't here at that point, I understand that the people who are now fighting development are pointing to Meisner as the poster child for great redevelopment when 25 years ago, those were the same people who said, oh my God, you're destroying our city. So I think people need to take a breath. And I think we have such a beautiful city. I think that we have redeveloped it over the last 25 years. We have a vibrant urban core. People are flocking to live in our city. There is a property right now they just broke ground on. It's called Tower 155, which is going to go up right behind the main post office. We have the Via Meisner project, where we're going to have a beautiful
Hotel.
Mandarin Oriental
Who would have
hotel.
ever thought?
I mean, does that raise the cachet of our city? There's so much good going on in the city. We have our own Museum of Art, which is first class. And all of these things, we have theater, we have all of these great things, and it wouldn't be possible if we didn't have a critical mass living in our downtown. The reason why the Boca Mall died is because people were not staying in the city at night. They would just leave the city at the night, go back out in the suburbs, and Town Center was born. Now people are staying in the city. I live out west. I can't wait to move to the east. I'm an empty nester now, and to me, I'd like to get out of the golf club community, come into the city where the action is.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Are there any other thoughts you'd like to leave with our residents?
Well, I hope that our residents will be out tomorrow. Tomorrow is election day. If you haven't voted yet, either by mail or by early voting, please come out tomorrow, vote. It's very important. We have obviously a lot of things on the ballot. If president, we're going to have a U.S. senator, and go all the way down the ballot. The very last question is going to be the City of Boca Raton question. And please read the question carefully and make an informed decision.
Thank you so much for joining us. Again, thank you for joining us at the Boca Voice. We appreciate your time and your efforts. And again, join us online. We continue the dialogue online. We appreciate your opinion, and we look forward to continuing the dialogue. Thank you again. We look forward to seeing you on Fact or Fiction Friday.